There is a conversation that millions of men in America are having privately with themselves in the dark, usually at 2 in the morning, that almost none of them are having out loud with anyone who could actually help them. It is the conversation about why their energy has dropped, why their drive has quietly disappeared, why their physical performance no longer reflects who they know themselves to be on the inside. And because the culture tells men that this is either a normal part of aging or a personal failure they should be embarrassed about, most of them do nothing. They just adapt downward, accepting a version of themselves that feels like a pale reflection of who they were at 32. The research says something entirely different. The research says that the vast majority of the factors that drive physical vitality, performance, and desire in men are modifiable through specific evidence-based natural interventions, and that the men who apply them consistently experience measurable improvements within weeks, not years. Today on Mangevity, we go through exactly what those interventions are and how to implement them. To understand why natural interventions work so powerfully for men's physical vitality and desire, you first need to understand what the research identifies as the root causes of the problem, because the root causes are not what most men assume they are. Most men who experience declining energy, reduced physical drive, and diminished desire attribute it to one of three things: stress, age, or simply being too busy. And while all three of those factors do play a role, the research consistently shows that they are not primary drivers. They are amplifiers of the real underlying physiological disruptions that, when addressed directly, produce the most dramatic and sustained improvements in how a man feels and performs. The first and most pervasive root cause is chronic nitric oxide deficiency. Nitric oxide is a molecule produced by the endothelial cells lining every blood vessel in the human body, and its primary function is vasodilation, the relaxation and widening of blood vessels that allows blood to flow freely and efficiently throughout the circulatory system. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine documented that men with the lowest nitric oxide bioavailability showed significantly impaired physical performance and measurably reduced desire compared to men with optimal vascular function. As men age, nitric oxide production naturally declines, but it declines dramatically faster in men who are sedentary, who eat diets low in leafy greens and dietary nitrates, who are chronically sleep-deprived, or who smoke. The daily life impact of this deficiency is not confined to the bedroom. It shows up as generalized fatigue, reduced exercise tolerance, slower recovery from physical exertion, and the kind of low-grade circulatory sluggishness that makes everything feel harder. The second root cause is testosterone decline, and not simply the gradual 1 to 2% annual decline that is a normal feature of male aging, but the accelerated decline that chronic cortisol elevation, poor sleep, excess visceral fat, and endocrine-disrupting chemicals produce in men who are not actively managing these variables. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism documented that men with chronically elevated cortisol, the stress hormone, showed testosterone levels that were meaningfully and measurably lower than age-matched peers with better managed stress responses. Because testosterone is the primary hormonal driver of libido, physical energy, muscle synthesis, and the neurological experience of motivation and drive, its decline does not produce a single symptom. It produces a cascade of interconnected ones that touch every dimension of a man's vitality. The third root cause is mitochondrial dysfunction, the gradual decline in the efficiency of the cellular energy production system that determines how much energy a man has available at any given moment, not just for sexual performance, but for every physical and cognitive demand of his life. Research from Harvard Medical School has documented that targeted lifestyle interventions can measurably reverse the markers of mitochondrial aging in men, meaning that the cellular machinery of vitality is not simply subject to an inevitable clock, but is responsive to deliberate intervention in ways that produce real measurable improvements in energy, endurance, and desire. The research on natural interventions for men's physical vitality is now extensive enough that it is no longer a matter of speculation or anecdote. It is a matter of applied clinical science, and the findings are both more specific and more optimistic than most men have ever been told. The first intervention category with the strongest and most consistent evidence base is resistance training, and the mechanism by which it produces improvements in desire and performance goes well beyond the obvious one of improving cardiovascular fitness. A landmark meta-analysis published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that heavy compound resistance training, specifically the kind that uses multi-joint movements under progressive load, produces acute post-exercise testosterone spikes of 15 to 30% compared to pre-training baseline, and that men who maintain a consistent resistance training habit over 8 to 12 weeks show sustained elevations in resting testosterone compared to sedentary controls. Beyond the hormonal mechanism, resistance training improves nitric oxide production by stressing the endothelium, the lining of blood vessels, in ways that stimulate endothelial nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme responsible for producing the vasodilatory molecule that drives healthy circulatory function throughout the body. The second intervention category is dietary, and here the research is both more specific and more actionable than most men expect. The dietary precursor to nitric oxide production is dietary nitrate, found in highest concentrations in beetroot, arugula, spinach, and celery, which the body converts through a bacterial and enzymatic process to nitrite and then to bioactive nitric oxide. A controlled trial published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology found that men who consumed a high nitrate diet for 7 days showed significant improvements in exercise efficiency and vascular function, measurable changes in just 1 week of consistent dietary modification. Zinc is the second dietary variable with the most direct hormonal relevance. Research from Wayne State University confirmed that zinc deficiency directly suppresses testosterone synthesis, and that men in zinc-deficient states who supplemented to adequacy showed testosterone increases of nearly 90% in some cohorts. Oysters, pumpkin seeds, beef, and lentils are among the highest dietary sources. Magnesium is the third dietary variable, with research from the Journal of Pharmaceutical and Biomedical Analysis finding that men with higher serum magnesium levels showed significantly higher free testosterone, the biologically active fraction of testosterone that actually enters cells and drives physiological effects. And this is where the suspense in this conversation reaches its most important and most underappreciated point. The men who are suffering the most from declining vitality and reduced desire are almost universally deficient in all 3 of these nutrients simultaneously, not because they are eating badly in obvious ways, but because the modern food supply, combined with the physiological demands of chronic stress, depletes these micronutrients faster than a standard diet replaces them. The man who eats reasonably well by conventional standards may still be running a significant deficit in the specific nutritional substrates that his hormonal and vascular health require. The solution framework that the research supports for men who want to restore and optimize their natural physical vitality is not complicated, but it is specific. And specificity is exactly what separates the men who experience genuine improvement from those who try generic wellness advice and conclude that nothing works for them. The framework operates across 4 pillars, each addressing one of the root mechanisms identified in the first section of this video. The first pillar is structured resistance training, 3 to 5 times per week, with progressive overload applied to compound movements. This is not negotiable and it is not optional. It is the single most powerful natural intervention for both testosterone optimization and nitric oxide production available to any man, regardless of age or starting fitness level. The protocol does not need to be complicated. Squats, deadlifts, rows, presses, and carries, performed with weight that represents a genuine challenge for the 8 to 12 repetition range, progressed consistently over weeks and months. The second pillar is sleep optimization, and the research on this is unambiguous. A study from the University of Chicago found that men who slept less than 5 hours per night for 1 week showed testosterone levels equivalent to men who were 10 to 15 years older. Every night of consistently poor sleep is a hormonal withdrawal, and no other intervention, dietary, supplemental, or pharmaceutical, can fully compensate for the testosterone suppression that chronic sleep restriction produces. The sleep hygiene protocol most directly supported by the research includes a consistent sleep and wake time 7 days a week, a bedroom temperature between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, zero light exposure during sleep hours, and a cessation of blue light exposure at least 90 minutes before bed. The third pillar is the dietary framework: high nitrate vegetables at minimum 2 servings per day, adequate zinc from whole food sources or supplementation at 15 to 30 milligrams daily, and magnesium at 3 to 400 milligrams daily from glycinate or malate forms, which have the highest bioavailability and the lowest incidence of digestive side effects. The fourth pillar is chronic stress reduction through a mechanism-specific approach, because reducing cortisol is not simply a matter of relaxing more, but of deliberately interrupting the physiological stress response through specific modalities that the research has validated. Structured Zone 2 cardiovascular exercise, walking, cycling, or swimming at a conversational pace for 30 to 45 minutes 3 times per week, is the most consistently documented cortisol-lowering activity in the peer-reviewed literature, with benefits that are distinct from and additive to the testosterone-boosting effects of resistance training. Cold water exposure, meditation, and the elimination of chronic sleep restriction all produce measurable cortisol reductions in clinical studies, and their combination represents a comprehensive cortisol management strategy that creates the hormonal environment in which desire, drive, and performance naturally recover. The man who implements all 4 pillars simultaneously does not wait months to notice a difference. The research documents measurable improvements in physical energy, desire, and performance within 3 to 6 weeks of consistent adherence. Changes that are driven not by a single magic intervention, but by the compounding effect of multiple natural mechanisms working simultaneously in the direction of restoration. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.